Hey guys, this is Brody from Rad Toy Review. Happy New Year. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 picks from 2015. Some of these we reviewed in the past, and you can check those out over at radtoyreview.com. We're going to talk about a few of the toys that didn't quite make the list, but were still good choices for you to possibly pick up for your collection, as well as the most disappointing toy, in my opinion, this year. So sit back, relax, enjoy. See you soon.
Okay, first off I want to take a second to mention a couple figures that I think should get some honorable mention despite not being in my top 5. First off, we have Hasbro's Star Wars Force Awakens Black Series, the first wave from that. The reason these are not on my list is because, well, they've been kind of hit or miss wave after wave, and this wave of Force Awakens figures are really no different. I mean, post-face, what happened there? But the reasons these are getting a nod from me is because the First Order Trooper, Kylo, and Phasma are pretty dang sweet. And for those out there who don't have or can't afford the expensive taste that's required when collecting higher end figures like Hot Toys, these are probably the most readily available solid options for those wanting to stuff their shelves with some pretty rad Star Wars Force Awakens figures. My second nod goes to Hot Toys Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, he's just lovely, amazingly detailed and sculpted. He's pretty limited articulation-wise. Not that I imagine you'd want to pose him up in Spider-Man ninja kind of poses, but even if you did, you couldn't. All you get is a little leg and waist motion, but most of the posing comes from his head and his arms, so there's really not a ton of range there. But still, he's absolutely beautiful on display, and easily one of the top figures that I get the most compliments on. Okay, on to the main countdown. Number 5, 3-Zero's Getter Robo. I was kind of surprised myself when I put this in my list, because I'm just not really familiar with the character beyond the research I did for our review a few months back, and I have no attachment to it otherwise. But I love big bots, and this is an amazingly put together bot. Just fantastic detail, incredible articulation, weathering and paint is all spot on. When I got him for review, I didn't expect to be so blown away by him, but I was. The only thing holding him back is his slippery, thus difficult to hold axes. Not that you should have to, but there is an easy mod to do to the grips that could fix that problem. So anyway, if you got this guy on pre-order, just be excited. He's awesome and you're going to love him. Number 4, 1000 Toys Carb. I don't think any top toy list this year would be complete without something from 1000 Toys in there. The Carb holds true to what 1000 Toys have made an art of, incredibly refined, posable 1/6 scale figures, engineered to a point of near perfection. It also mixes it up a little by adding some modified parts with retractable blades in his arm and foot. While I love the more recent anti-Carb, and it gave us an idea of the direction 1000 Toys are going to be going in the future with fully clothed figures and accessories, I picked the Carb because I love the more menacing aesthetic, and unlike the anti-Carb, I really have no complaints about him. Number 3, Star-Lord, man. I have a love-hate thing when it comes to Hot Toys figures. I'm probably about 50-50 with the ones in my collection I love and the ones I'm filled with disappointment about. But Star-Lord is one that I love. This is actually the first Hot Toys figures that got me truly invested in the idea of collecting Hot Toys. One of the many great things about this guy is that he sports nearly perfectly tailored, highly detailed clothing. Clothing that, I might add, does very little to restrict the great articulation hidden beneath. There's that spot-on Chris Pratt portrait with his vaguely swarmy smirk painted up beautifully and masterfully sculpted. You get an awesome secondary helmeted head that has red LED eyes and a lot of fun accessories like his sweet guns, and while sadly not branded as Sony like in the film, a cool little cassette player. All in all, Hot Toys delivered, and if you're a Guardians of the Galaxy fan at all, Star-Lord is definitely one for your collection. Number 2, 3A's 1/6 scale Dirty Deeds Birdie. I'll be honest, I love 3A. I've been collecting them for years. Their figures make up the largest part of my collection, and I plan to keep on collecting them for years to come. That said, this year I've only picked up 2 or 3 items because for whatever reason, my eyes seem to glaze over whenever a new figure went up for pre-order. Sure, I definitely skipped a few here and there that I now deeply regret, but for the most part I found things I was more interested in elsewhere. That said, I'm giving Dirty Deeds Birdie a solid second place in my top 5 toys of the year. The 1/12 version that came out 6 or 7 years ago was one of the first 3A figures I ever owned. It alone can take credit for bringing me back kicking and screaming into the toy collecting universe. I have no idea why it took 3A so long to bring this dude back to the spotlight, but if everything they did turned out this nigh perfect, then the wait was worth it. The classic Ashley Wood birdie design, the paint weathering details, the articulation, the QC, the amazing accessories that include a Gatling gun, machete, pistol, and 3 heads from some poor souls echo everything that makes 3A special. Some complain that 3A has been losing its way with more licensed toys and more Pasha dolls than you can possibly justify owning. But I think this bot is a sign that they're still listening, that they still know what those of us out here who have been doing around since practically day one are really pining for. 3A killed it with their 1/6 birdie, Dirty Deeds. Getting him in 2015 is reason enough for me to re-up my membership for 2016 in hopes of squeezing in a few more amazing drops into my 3A collection. Before we move on to number 1, I'm going to tell you what my biggest disappointment was this year. While some of you have tragic 3A QC stories or two, I had no such bad experience with anything I landed from them. Nope. The one figure I got this year that looked amazing on display at San Diego Comic-Con 2014 and wound up being basically fragile junk in hand and the very definition of everything I dislike about Hot Toys was the otherwise beautiful Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy. Incredibly nicely tailored and looking clothing, a beautiful face sculpt, but next to no allowable articulation thanks to that overly tailored clothing. Weak QC on her hip holster, which you can see doesn't even hold it in place, and most of all, dismal QC on her skin. From lightly posing her over the course of a fairly short photo shoot, she already was showing signs on both her elbows of peeling skin, and there's just no way to fix that. It's not like a floppy body or a peg that's too loose. It's a flaw in the design. And after being absolutely thrilled with Star-Lord just a couple months prior, Gamora arrived on my doorstep and just brought me crashing back to reality that Hot Toys isn't perfect and that they probably will still release stinkers from time to time. Number 1. This was actually the easiest choice on my list. The Hot Toys, Han and Chewie. While I got them separately, I have to score them together because they are the toy version of peanut butter and jelly. One is just not the same without the other. I haven't been so pleased with a toy purchase in recent memory. Having my childhood heroes sitting on my workstation looking over me while I work is far more thrilling than it probably should be. From the amazing tailoring and copious accessories to the fantastic level Hot Toys was able to bring a completely fur-covered articulated toy to reality, I couldn't be more pleased. I've heard a lot of people complain about Han's face, saying that it doesn't quite match up to Harrison, and I agree, it's off, if only a little, but regardless of that, I look over at them and I see Han and Chewie. Probably the best Han and Chewie any of us are going to see in our lifetimes. If I sold every Hot Toys figures I had, and most of my collection, I'd definitely keep these two. That's it, folks. That's our top 5.
Alright guys, that was our top 5 toys of 2015. Let us know down in the comments what you thought, and if you had a completely different list or you have a toy you think I should check out, let me know and I will do my best to do so. 2016 is already looking great, so subscribe, like, follow us over at our Facebook page to stay up to date on all of our new reviews, which will be popping soon. Everyone take care. Aloha, see you soon.